welcome back to the Odair Academy in Conversation With, and a big shout out to all the people that are listening on the Actors Toolkit podcast. Today we are joined by the lovely casting director, Alison Murchie. Alison, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I am good, fantastic, excited to get on with this interview.
And the sun's out as well, so that makes a change.
I know, beautiful weather we're getting at last. At last, it feels like this year's been going on forever. First question, which is what we ask to everybody: who is Alison Murchie? Can you tell us a little bit about you and your career so far?
God, I've been working in casting for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I had quite a varied career, I suppose. When I finished university, I went to Prague, and that's when they started filming stuff there, and I met Nancy, who I work with now. She was running a theatre company. So in some ways that, those 2 years sort of set me up for kind of what I'm doing now. Did a little bit of acting, like a lot of people. Then I ended up working at the Imperial War Museum for 4 years. Then I was an editor for a travel guide. And then finally, been doing casting for about 10 years. But I think if I'd known that such a career existed when I first started out, I would have been doing it for a lot longer.
Yeah, of course. And of course, you work with the lovely Nancy Bishop. You're an associate there. How does that dynamic kind of work with Nancy?
Well, it's great. I mean, she's very easy to work with. I started off with another casting director, doing sort of mainly commercials and stuff like that. And then, I've been freelance for all this time, but, working pretty much, 99% of the time with Nancy, which has been great. And a lot of her projects, are European based. So that, that plays to both our strengths and stuff. So it's been very good.
And what's kind of changes have you seen in the industry post-pandemic? Because obviously the world collapsed a couple of years ago, and things in the industry had to change. Obviously, we've moved to a lot more self-taping auditions. But what's your opinion on how the industry's changed?
I mean, obviously, the biggest change is doing stuff on Zoom, self-tapes. And, as you know yourself being an agent, that there are pros and cons to doing this. So the pros are obviously we get to see a lot more actors. And, the actors don't have to waste time and money traveling to an audition that might be at the other end of the country for them, or, they might be on holiday. Actors can now self-tape from wherever they happen to be. And, that's a huge advantage. And obviously, like I say, we get to see a lot more actors, which actually is good. But of course, you don't have the personal meeting with them, which, is usually quite enjoyable. It's quite interesting to see how people react, how people respond. So that obviously has been a change. And I think a lot of the changes are more general than perhaps just because of the pandemic. They're the way that we've moved on. During the pandemic, we had a lot of time to sit down and think and address things. So I think, the way we work has really moved on as a result of that. So in terms of casting, like I say, we're seeing a lot more different actors, different types of actors for different roles. We're seeing a lot more different stories being told. Obviously the whole Me Too has had a huge effect on how things are filmed, how people are auditioned, how people are treated. So I think a lot of the changes that have happened from that have been more of a result of examination, and perhaps the way we've moved on from that, as well as just, because of the pandemic.
Yeah. And do you think there are more projects out there being made? Is there more money floating around for projects, or less post-pandemic?
I think, as you know yourself, I think there was a huge surge of projects being made when they could be being made. So a lot of projects, obviously, unfortunately didn't happen that were about to be made on the, when COVID happened. But, so much has been made since then. And, and of course, during the pandemic, we realized how much we rely on entertainment and what's available out there. However, of course, since then, there's obviously been a dip that, a lot of stuff was made. But now, of course, we're not all at home all the time. We're back at work. So, there's not necessarily such a huge need for things to be made. But I think there are a lot more projects happening, a lot more different, there's obviously web series. People can do their own stuff on their YouTube channels. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and that has changed a lot since the pandemic. There's a lot more channels to watch things on.
Yeah, of course. And what kind of things are you working on at the moment? Only, of course, things you can tell us about.
Yeah, no, we've just we haven't finished yet, but we've been working on a film that's quite an interesting film, sort of set in the Cypriot community in South Africa. One that's that's
That the well-known Cypriot community.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of history between the sort of
Yeah.
war in Cyprus and the different communities there, and the different communities in South Africa. So it's actually quite an interesting film. We've got a lot of projects that we're working on at the moment. They're in development. So when you talked about asking about finance, there is money, but of course there's not money for every project. So trying to waiting for stuff to get greenlit, waiting for things to go ahead. But we've got some really interesting, good projects in the pipeline. So there's a historical piece, there's a comedy, there's a dystopian future thing, and there are a couple of projects that I can't talk about. So there's a lot going on, but as usual, sometimes it's you're waiting for the final thing, and then that you're going to get 3 projects going at once, and
Yeah, excellent. No, I know that you and Nancy worked on the second installment of the Borat movies, and there was a lot of press and a lot of attention to the co-star. Were you involved in finding her, and do you find yourself championing a lot of new actors?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great experience because quite often, you're working on sort of smaller independent films, and you're ringing someone up and say, could you do this much work for this much money? And suddenly you've got a huge project and a huge name behind you. It's great to be able to go out. And of course, the interest in it was huge, though we couldn't say at the time what it was for. So no, that was, I was, Nancy and I were very much involved in that. And that was great fun because, it was some actors obviously we knew before. But we were, looking at a lot of actors we'd never seen, and you just think, gosh, the talent pool is huge, from all over, not just Eastern Europe, but from everywhere, and seeing lots of different people that we'd never seen before, and how they approach the role, how they approach the, the improvisation, what they thought about it. It was it was a great project to work on. I mean, I know Borat's not to everyone's taste. It's that kind of comedy. I mean, I thought it was a great film, and I thought she was absolutely amazing.
She was, really was. And we did a workshop the other night, and there was a participant who commented on the fact that she's getting a little bit bored of seeing the same people in every project. There are certain actors, and she's just kind of getting bored of them. And she was saying that she was at the theater the other day, and it was a West End production, and there wasn't a single well-known person in it, but it was one of the best productions she'd ever seen. Do you think, I mean, she was Australian, so she was mostly commenting on the American and Australian market, but she was saying in the UK there seems to be this need to have well-known actors all the time to back up your projects. And do you find that that's a thing when you're dealing with producers? They want well-known actors? Or
I mean, of course, I think that if you've got a certain actor in your film, that's going to sell it. And what I love, I think, as a casting person, is I love a project where you might have a couple of names just to kind of get people's attention and get the money and get an audience more interested. But there are other roles, the sort of secondary or other lead roles where the director and the producer are really open to new faces. And and that's really exciting to do that, because I have agents complaining all the time that oh my gosh, it's that person again, or it's that person again. Not stuff that we've cast particularly, but when you're watching TV, you do see a lot of the same actors, and that's no disrespect to them. A lot of them are fantastic actors, but you do get to see the same faces a lot. And so I think bringing new people to viewers is a wonderful thing that can be done. But unfortunately, some productions aren't open to that. A lot of directors are. A lot of directors are very keen to see actors. They want the actor that's best for that role. And often, of course, you need to sell it. You need to find distributors. You need the people who can help you do that. So
it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? Because you need the money in place, and you can only get the money with the big names. But it's just one of these things that we have to deal with, I suppose. Right, taking back to what we were talking about self-tapes. What do you think makes the ideal self-tape audition? So what kind of things are you looking out for in a self-tape?
I mean, it's a difficult question, because on the one hand, we have a set of rules that we explain to people if we're doing a workshop or if we're in drama schools talking to actors about, drama students about how to do a self-tape. And of course, you want the right equipment, you want to be seen, you want to be heard, you want the focus to be on you. You want a plain background, you want plain clothes.
Mhm.
But sometimes you see a self-tape and they've broken all those rules, and that's the one that stands out because it's just the performance. It's the
Yeah.
actor who gives their all, who's the person you've been looking for. So on the one hand, it's easy to say, do it at this angle, be well lit, have a curtain behind you. But when it comes down to it, it's the actor, it's their performance, it's their interpretation, it's how how they see the role, what differences they add, because obviously with self-tape sometimes we can see hundreds of self-tape, so it's someone who makes it different, who makes it alive, who makes me laugh at that joke that I've heard 50 times before. Suddenly I'll see something new in the text. So that's what really stands out. And it's like I say, it's hard because it's not tangible. It can be following the rules, it can be breaking them. So
when you talk about breaking the rules, what kind of turn-offs are there for you with self-taping? Are there things that actors do and you go, oh no, actually don't do that in a self-tape? A lot of people mention the use of props sometimes that can be a bit distracting, or
yeah, I mean, I think props are fine, as long as they don't take over and you can use them well. So, for example, when we did Borat tapes, I was seeing lots of girls who were doing different things. It could be eating something, it could be, like playing with something. I mean, it was just, people were using them, and it was interesting to see what people did and how they made it different. So, but if it's a specific prop, I mean, I just think recently, we had someone eating an apple, and yeah, it was how they did it, really. If they were chewing for too long or it was too noisy, then yeah, it's distracting. But if they were using it and it's fine, you took a bite, you could use it to that was part of the sides, really, that the person was talking with their mouth full. And of course an actor can act that, and it really didn't bother me either way, whether they used an apple or not. It was how it came across. I mean, obviously, again, the advantage of a self-tape is you can listen back to yourself, and if your speech is muffled, if the crunch of the apple is too loud, get rid of it. But if someone's on the phone, it's fine, pick up a phone, you've got it there, just use it, why not? But of course, you don't want it to dominate it. The focus is still the actor. So look back at yourself. What do you think? Is it adding something or is it detracting? So that's the main thing.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of casting directors talking about doing too much in a self-tape as well. Maybe making choices when it comes to costumes or accents and things that aren't necessarily in the script, but you may be doing yourself a disservice because the director's obviously got an idea in their head of how they want the character to be. Do you find that quite a lot?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of getting the right balance, because sometimes an actor can surprise a director, and quite often it's that actor that then gets through to the next round. So an actor who does it exactly how it should be done, you go, okay, yeah, they're great, maybe we'll see them again. But it's the actor who surprises, perhaps,
Right, okay.
who gets through to the next round. And like I'm saying, it's a fine balance, you don't want to go too far. But I think I mean, it's common sense, really, that you can hint at something. If it's a military thing, then you've got a khaki t-shirt or something like that, fine. But we don't need to see all the badges and the hat.
No, of course. Yeah. If you're getting past the self-tape stage, a lot of recalls at the moment are being done by Zoom. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, again, it has all the advantages of a self-tape because, like I said, an actor could be filming something else. They could be on set somewhere. They could be on holiday. They could be wherever.
Yeah.
So of course it has that advantage that, you're able to meet with them and chat with them like we are now.
Yeah.
And I suppose it depends on what the director wants from them. Because I think, quite often it's just a chat. They go, okay, I like what they did. I want to see, can I get on with them? And obviously the actor needs to know, am I going to have to do the lines again? Do they want them done differently? Find out as much in advance what you're going to be asked to do. And so you can prepare for it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's strange in a way, because I did a workshop the other day, one of the first times in person, and you forget that, you know, actors have, you know, they have legs as well, because so much of what we do is, you know, is this. And so obviously it's really nice to see an actor in person. But I mean, certainly a lot, I don't think it, you know, it doesn't detract from their performance. It doesn't detract from who they are by doing it on Zoom, you know, because we're so used to it now.
Yeah. And what do you think of the common pitfalls when it comes to Zoom auditioning that actors tend to fall in?
I think sometimes it's strange, because they might have done a really good self-tape, and then the Zoom is kind of like, well, how we are now. So they haven't really thought about how that, I mean, I don't think about, you know, I don't have any lighting or microphones or anything. It's just me and my computer. But, you know, sometimes, you know, they kind of, you know, it would be better for them to treat it a bit more as an audition. So rather than being at their kitchen table, then perhaps set themselves up as they were for the self-tape, with the lighting, with the microphone. You know, so it's still an audition unless they're told it's just a chat, in which case, you know, at their kitchen table is fine. But yeah, sometimes I think, you know, the quality of the Zoom isn't as good as the quality of the self-tape. And I think they can help themselves by treating it more like a self-tape, certainly if they have to do the lines again.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I noticed that you were involved with one of the Mission Impossible movies. Obviously, with that being a massive franchise, I suppose with Borat as well, with you doing the sequel, do you ever find that there's a certain way that the producers like things to be cast when it comes to something like that that's so well known? You know, the likes of James Bond and Fast and the Furious, these kind of things where there's a big franchise. Do you find that that is kind of pushed forward by the producers? They want a certain type of actor for these kind of projects?
It really depends. I mean, each project's different. And, you know, I think one of the reasons that, you know, that we work on some of these is because, you know, we're certainly Nancy from, you know, she's lived half the time in Prague, half the time in London. You know, she knows a large pool of actors based there who are English speakers, who can do, you know, I mean, these are for the smaller roles in these films. You know, people who are there on location, they can call up, you know, at short notice sometimes, you know, because I think it's more a case of, you know, looking at who's there and how they can be used. So I don't think so. I mean, I think like any project really, you know, they want someone who fits the role. And, you know, of course, there's a certain type that you're going to have in Mission Impossible, but it really depends on which Mission Impossible it is. They're all different. So,
yeah, of course. Yeah, cool.
You know, but quite often, you know, again, with certainly with the pandemic, the location of an actor has become quite important, because you know, it's obviously there's the financial aspect as well, that if they're filming in Prague and an actor's based in Prague, they go, great, well, yeah, let's use him, then we don't have to pay for flights and things like that. But certainly during the pandemic, you know, I mean, I think one film we were working on, you know, it started off, we were looking at all of Europe, and then I think, you know, the only countries we could get actors from were Switzerland and Serbia, because they were the only two that were allowed to travel at that time. So
we were the same way. It was actors from France and Malta, because they were shooting in Malta, and France seemed to be the only government that had the same rules as Malta. So yeah, and of course with Brexit as well, because so many places require now a European passport rather than a British one.
Yeah. I mean, I always say that to actors. It's always worth mentioning, you know, if they have an EU passport, because again, you know, I mean, it doesn't seem to have affected us a whole load yet, but you know, it does make a difference. So
it's until you arrive at customs and get rejected.
And again, you know, in terms of time and the 90-day thing, you know, it does make a difference. If you're working on a series that shoots so many days over the year, of course that makes a difference. You know, people want to make sure that they can do it as easily as possible. So yeah, it does help sometimes.
One of the old adages in this industry is it's not what you know, it's who you know. So networking is obviously a massive part of being an actor. What do you feel is the best way that actors can network with casting directors?
I mean, you know, we get a lot of emails, obviously, and you know, I read all the emails that come through to me. Quite often it depends on what project we're working on. So, and if an actor's seen that we're looking for a German speaking actor who's based in Hungary, you know, and they happen to be that person, that's brilliant. But obviously quite often it's much more general than that. So yeah, I mean, we do certainly, email is the easiest because it means that I've got your CV, I've got your headshots, I've got a reel just at a click if you send those through to me. And also to invite us to things, I mean, quite often, I like going to see, well, lots of different things. I see things in pub theatres, I see things, in the West End, I see films, I see, all sorts of things. So I do, we do like getting invited to things. And if it's convenient, we will go. So I think even if you're, up in the north of Scotland or down in the south of Cornwall, it's still worth inviting people to things because you don't know whether we're going to be there that week. And, or we know someone else who happens to be there and we can send them along. So I think, anything that you do, the chances are we can't make it. That's fine. If it's, I live in London, I've got 3 kids at school, I'm not going to be traveling the length and breadth of the country just to go and see something. But, if it's convenient, and I happen to be there, then I will do my best to go and see you. So I think that's
it's always the thing. If you don't ask, it's always a no. So
exactly.
Give it a try. Right. What's your career highlight and why?
I think when something comes together, it's really great. So I think sometimes, when you're casting something and you see an actor and in your head, they're the right person for the role, and you show them to the director and they think they're the right person for the role. And then, they go to the producer and they think they're the right person. Then you go to the agent and, there might be a bit of backwards and forwards, but eventually it all gets sorted. I think, that's very enjoyable, and also, when something happens, obviously, you mentioned Borat earlier, suddenly I don't think anyone expected Maria to be nominated for an Oscar in a film like that. It was quite, it was all improvised. It was Borat, it's a certain genre. And then for her to get the recognition like that was amazing,
And for somebody unknown as well. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, she wasn't unknown in her country, but
but in the general,
certainly, worldwide. And to see, how she's developed, as an actor and the projects that she's moved on to. And again, of course, Nancy got an Artios Award for that, which was great. The only downside of that, of course, was it was still in the pandemic. So rather than going to a big award ceremony, it was like in the office in jeans and t-shirt. So that was a shame. But I think sometimes it's things like that. And also, someone an unknown I cast in a commercial, and I hadn't followed their career, and then picking up the Guardian one day and just seeing that they'd made it really big in Bollywood, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gave that person their first job. So things like that are very rewarding. But also, like you say, it's when things come together, and especially with an actor that perhaps hasn't had the recognition that they've deserved, and perhaps we've been pushing for different projects, and seeing them get the job and the recognition that they deserve, that's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, definitely. As an agent, seeing my actors getting work, it's the same feeling I used to get when I was an actor getting a job, and it's a great feeling. Can you remember a really memorable audition, and why was it memorable? So I'm assuming you've seen thousands and thousands of auditions, but was there ever one that stood out, or maybe two, and what was the reason for them standing out?
I think, it partly goes back to what I was saying about making something different. So, I think, quite often, when you read a script as an actor or as a casting person or as a director, you hear the voice in your head, and an actor might come in and read it perfectly, but there's something you go, oh, okay, yeah, actually that's a little bit dull, because that was what I was expecting. And it's hard. So I think sometimes, like I said, it's the ones where someone's made a brave choice, and they've taken it through, and they've made it unexpected. So perhaps it's a very grim scene, but somehow I found myself laughing in spite of it. They've made me laugh in spite of it. Or like I say, it's an interpretation that I wasn't expecting, but you go, oh, right, okay, yeah, that's interesting. I really like that. And then, again, like I said, it's good because then perhaps other people agree. And of course, Nancy and I don't always agree on who we think is great. Nancy and I might agree, but the director's not keen, wants to see 3 other choices. It's sometimes, it's hard. And there's certainly one audition, you know, when we worked on a Netflix series where, you know, we were in agreement and the team was in agreement that the person we saw literally in the first hour, you know, was the actor for the role. You know, they came in, they inhabited it, they were fantastic, but then, you know, they still wanted to see 50 other actors.
Yeah.
But then of course, you know, that person got the role. You know, that those are definitely, you know, the memorable ones, really. You know, like I say, it's basically, you know, it's part of a process. And of course, you know, I remember ones where yeah, it's a real shame that you know, a particular actor didn't get the role. But it's, yeah, it's where, you know, all the right things have collided and you
Yeah,
know,
excellent.
and seen through to the end. So
And how do you generally find actors for your project? So obviously, if a script comes through for a project that you're casting from the start, what's your process in finding the correct actors for the roles?
it really depends on the project. So, you know, if it's a specific role or, you know, because obviously the projects we work on, sometimes we're casting every single person from, you know, one line up to the lead. Sometimes, you know, it's just one specific role. So obviously, you know, we have lists of people that we've auditioned before, you know, people that we've met. We have, you know, like I say, endless email files of, you know, actors who speak different languages, where they're based, you know, and then obviously we can use those lists. And of course, you know, we might approach actors and agents directly saying, you know, can you suggest this is the script? Can you suggest people for this role? But, you know, the majority of stuff we do, we go out on spotlights and try and find people on that. Unless, of course, it's a European based project, in which case we also use, you know, eTalenta, casting networks, all those things. So there's usually a breakdown that gets posted and, you know, we follow up from that. So
Yeah. And for a typical breakdown, let's say for a feature film where you're casting a role that maybe has 3 or 4 lines in the one scene, how many applications do you typically get for something like that?
well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the role. So
Yeah.
if we're looking for, you know, an actor, male or female, that can be between 20 and 30, then we'll get, we know there'll be over 1,000 for each role. If, like I say, if we can narrow it down and it can be something more specific, so we're looking for a particular look or we're looking for a particular skill, obviously that narrows it down a bit more, which is why I say to actors, you know, if you've got a skill, put it on spotlight, because, you know, that will narrow it down. So, you know, if it's an accent or a language or something like that, you know, we'll put that in our search criteria. And again, you know, quite often if we're having, if we've got a lot of people applying for one job, you know, I'll look through all the suggestions, but if we want a German speaker and they don't have German on their list, I haven't necessarily got time to ring the agent and check, do they speak German, unless I'm really interested in them. So it's really important that you have everything up there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, you're just going to move on to the next one. So
Yeah. And do you tend to do quite a lot of searches on Spotlight before putting a roll out on Spotlight? You know, so if you're searching for something specific like that, you know, a German speaking actor that can ride a unicycle on the back of a horse, then you're going to do the search for it.
yes, you do. And then, you know, quite often you might ring up an agent and say, okay, this, they say this, is this right? You know, and double check that they can do it. And, you know, and ask for suggestions, because quite often, you know, agents will have new people who aren't necessarily on Spotlight yet. So, you know, we certainly contact agents. But yeah, if it's something very specific and perhaps we haven't got all the suggestions in on Spotlight, then I might do a search myself and just check that the agent has picked up on this. And perhaps, you know, sometimes there's a bit more flexibility with dates or with money than we put out. So, you know, you can then go to the agent directly and say, you know, I found this person, you know, are they free? Can they do this? So yeah, I mean, I think having all those things up there, and of course there are other, it's not just Spotlight, there are other places as well you can go and look. But yeah, having your skills, your accents up to date, I think is, you know, is paramount really for being found for these roles.
And do you find that you have time to watch examples of these? So what I get a lot of our actors to do is, if they can do, or if they can speak German fluently, why not put up a 1-minute monologue in German? Because then the casting director can watch it and see what your German's like. Or sports skills, you know, if you can skateboard, why not have a 1-minute reel of you skateboarding? Because it's something visual that you can see. Do you tend to have time to watch those, or?
I mean, it depends on the project, but yes, of course, it's like, I mean, you know, we worked on a film where it was actually just a voice that we needed. It was a voiceover that needed to have a German accent. So, you know, if someone has that on their voice reel, it made it so much easier to say, just to click on it and say, all right, yeah, this sounds good. And, you know, occasionally you go, oh no, okay, yeah, they think they can do it, but they can't. So, but yeah, it gives you a much better idea.
We tend to tell our actors that the biggest commodity out there is time. So try and make it as easy as possible for the casting director to find what they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, in some ways, sometimes it's off-putting to have too much, but then of course, you never know what the casting director is going to be looking for. It might be horse riding, it might be boxing, it might be you know, a Swiss German accent. You know, you don't know what they're going to be looking for. And if you haven't got it out there, then
yeah, that's very true. When it comes to show reels, how much of a show reel do you watch? Because I've heard some casting directors saying that they, you know, they maybe watch the first 20 seconds and then maybe skip through and watch most of the last scene. Some say they watch it from start to finish. Some say they can find what they're looking for in the first sort of 20, 30 seconds. What's your process when it comes to watching show reels?
A bit of both, I think. And I think, you know, what we need to see is how you look on camera and how you sound. That's the most important thing. So, you know, I can get that in 20 seconds. You know, if it's a specific skill or if it's a specific look that we're going for, a specific genre, then yes, I might watch further to see whether you've got any, you know, to see whether you've got any archery or, you know, oh, like this is you doing, you know, a 21st century cop film. This is you doing a Victorian melodrama. I mean, you know, it depends on what we're casting, but most importantly is how you sound and how you look on camera. And that, of course, you know, I can see, you know, in a very short time. Again, it might be an accent, it might be a language that, you know, I will watch the whole thing just, or, you know, click forward to see what skills you've got on there. But yeah, generally, you know, it's like, okay, I think this person looks good. You know, do they look like they do on their headshot when they're on camera? You know, and how do they sound? So yeah, that's you can do that in a short space of time.
There's the next question is one that we ask to every single person that comes on the podcast. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be and why?
I think some things have changed for the best. You know, certain things that, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know, we've moved on. I think there is more diverse casting. There's more, like I said, there's more embracing of different stories. There's more ways of telling these stories. I think, you know, I would like to see more actors on screen. I would, you know, we talked about it earlier, you know, sometimes you see the same people doing the same sort of roles. I would like to see more actors. I think, you know, like I say, more actors from different walks of life, more actors from coming up through different ways. You know, it would be great to have, you know, more things to watch and more, you know, of quality and, you know, showing different skills. So I don't know, I think, you know, people are watching more stuff, obviously, on telly from the comfort of their own homes. I mean, I would like to see more independent film festivals in this country.
Yeah.
You know, it would be great to have, and of course there are some, but it would be great to have more of those so people can showcase their work. People, you know, more films can be made for different markets, different genres. You know, I think it's that would be great. Whether that would ever happen or not in this day and age, you know, I would like more funding for the arts.
I was just a way to say it. Normally it comes down to money. We interviewed a filmmaker a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying the same thing. He was like, it's so hard to go about making an indie film if you're trying to make profit from it, you know, because there's no money to fund them, and then there's not really an audience, you know, a wide enough audience out with the Marvels and the you know, things like that want to watch independent films. And maybe that is because there isn't enough festivals championing these films.
Yeah, no, it really would be great, especially in the UK, I think, to see more film festivals, more small film festivals, local film festivals that would champion such, you know, would champion these things. But of course, you know, it comes down to money, it comes down to funding, it comes down to the fact that at the click of a button, we can watch, you know, pretty much anything on, you know, a screen at home. So, you know, whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. But, you know, I would like to see a lot of the actors that I've seen over the years, you know, in things. Yeah, it would be nice to do that. And, you know, casting itself has, you know, started to get more recognized as a job, as a career, as, there started
as
being
a creative process. You know, so many people forget that the casting is a creative process.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's getting more recognition, which is great. Obviously more and would be nice. So yeah, I think, things are changing in a lot of ways for the better. So yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Well, final question. If you could give actors one piece of advice for their careers, what would it be?
I think, I don't know. I think it's such a hard career.
Mhm. We've
And
had so many varied answers for this. Some people have said, if you can do anything else, go and do it.
yeah,
That's
well,
always a
yeah,
good one. Yeah.
don't give up the day job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my one of my daughters, this is years ago, she's about 7. She said she wanted to be a rock star, and and then she kind of has a go at me later. Well, you destroyed my dream. You're not going to do that. It's too difficult. Too many people, and and in some ways, I sort of see the same. I say the same to actors. It's picture your, obviously everyone wants to act in a film, or they want to act, in the West End or whatever. But picture yourself, ask yourself, will I be happy doing what I'm doing now? Maybe the odd job here, odd job there. Is this something that I can do for the rest of my life? Or, do I love it enough? And it's great if you do love it, that's fantastic. And I think so many people act because they love it and because that's all they can do.
Yeah.
And that's great. So, I could say something like be true to yourself, but I think it's such a hard, it's such a hard profession. There's so much rejection. There's so many people, wanting to do it, that perhaps, ask yourself, do I really want to do this? And the other thing, of course, is if you do really want to do this and you can cope with all the rejection, and then, keep going, work on your skills, don't give up. There's stuff you can be doing all the time to improve on what you've got, whether it's improving on your self-taping skills or working on an accent, going to workshops. It's just, keep going and don't give up.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, Alison, that's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for answering our questions. And yeah, if you ever need anything, you know where the Academy is.
Lovely. Thank you very much. It was lovely to do this, and lovely to do your workshop as well a couple of weeks ago with your amazing actors. They're fantastic.
Oh, yes, it was really, really good workshop. Brilliant. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Take care.